Hey guys, this is your host Eric. Today we are going to watch action genre movie called First Blood. Spoilers ahead, turn on your subtitle, I greatly appreciate your support. Enjoy the video. The plot revolves around a former US soldier, John Rambo, who is traumatized by his memories of the Vietnam War and becomes involved in a series of brutal events, including a massive manhunt by police and government troops, which triggers his violent side. The film begins with John Rambo searching for his son in the suburbs of a small town called Hope in Washington. As he approaches an old cottage, he encounters a woman who is busy with her household chores. John quickly inquires about his former comrade. Delmer Berry chose a photograph of him with Delmer during the Vietnam War, only to learn that his friend died last summer from cancer caused by Agent Orange exposure during the war. Rambo is taken aback by the depressing news. He hands over the lady's photographs and proceeds to the town. Way was approached by a local sheriff. Teal, Will is a patriotic, arrogant, and ruthless man with a sense of entitlement. Rambo immediately strikes him as suspicious, given his FSY getup, messy hair, and army jacket. He asks Rambo where he is going after learning that Rambo is going north. Will offers him a ride to ensure he is on the right track. Rambo reluctantly gets into the car, and Will inquires about his final destination once more. This time, Rambo informs him that he wishes to travel to Portland, which is located in the south. Rambo then asks Will for directions to a diner where he is plotting, tells him about a diner 30 miles up the road. Will gives Rambo the impression that he is attempting to push him away from the country because there is no way a diner is not nearby but 30 miles away. Will gets offended and rudely tells Rambo that he doesn't want guys like him in his town because it's the small, safe, and peaceful city, and he intends to keep it that way. Instead of driving him towards the diner, Will drives him towards the border. He leaves Rambo there and tells him that Portland is straight ahead. He also advises Rambo to take a shower and change his clothes. Otherwise, people in Portland will suspect him as well. He was irritated by the sheriff's rude behavior toward him. Instead of heading south, Rambo begins to walk back towards town. Will notices him driving back into town through the side mirror of his car. He quickly turns his car towards Rambo and asks him why he is returning to the city. Rambo disregards Will and continues. This enrages Will, and he demands Rambo's identification, telling him that he is under arrest. Will quickly searches Rambo, only to discover that he is carrying a knife. He quickly arrests him on vagrancy, resisting arrest, and carrying a concealed weapon charges. Rambo is taken to the police station, where he will be given a taste of his own medicine by his vicious Chief Deputy Art Gala. Ram is led downstairs and interrogated about his identity and whereabouts. Instead of responding to Rambo's, he is haunted by flashbacks of the torture he endured in Vietnam. Rambo remains silent, refusing to answer any of the deputy's questions. The officer then attempts to obtain Rambo's fingerprints on paper, but Rambo firmly refuses. Will tell Rambo that if he doesn't cooperate, he'll be imprisoned for 90 days and fined $250. Rambo continues to ignore them. Will is enraged by Rambo's unbothered behavior and orders the officers to clean him up. Rambo is ordered to strip naked, and the officers are taken aback by the cuts and bruises all over his body. Waterboarding is used to coerce him into cooperating with the interrogation. Rambo is constantly plagued by flashbacks to his ordeal as a prisoner of war in Vietnam. Rambo freaks out just as he's about to be shaved with a straight razor and dried. He knocks down the officers one by one, including the tough deputy Gout. Rambo then runs upstairs, grabs his knife, and flees the station. On the street, he quickly yanks a man off his motorcycle, steals it, and flees the station, pursued by Will in his patrol car. Rambo wreaks havoc on the city as he makes his way into the woods. Will does not give up and continues to pursue Rambo through the woods. Unfortunately, his car rolls over, forcing him to exit before the engine explodes. He loudly warns Rambo that if he defies the police, he will be killed. Infuriated by his failure to apprehend Rambo, he orders the formation of a full-fledged search party complete with automatic weapons, dogs, and a helicopter in order to prevent Rambo from fleeing the town. Meanwhile, Rambo takes a thick piece of cloth and cuts a cape out of it with his knife, which he wears and wears uphill. Will, on the other hand, begins his search with a search team and numerous dogs. Rambo hears the dogs barking and begins to flee for his life. He comes across a cliff and decides to climb down it over a creek. However, just as Rambo is hanging from the cliff, Gold arrives in a helicopter flying above his head. Against Will's orders, he begins shooting at Rambo with his rifle. Will begs him not to shoot over the radio, but Rambo, determined to kill him, keeps firing at him from his helicopter. Rambo realizes his life is in danger and jumps from the cliff, landing on a tree branch and severely injuring his right arm. Meanwhile, Gull notices Rambo on the ground and instructs the pilot to land the helicopter near him. Golf begins shooting as he gets close to Rambo. Rambo then grabs a rock with his uninjured arm and throws it at the helicopter. This cracks the windshield of the helicopter, causing the pilot to lose control for it. Gads, who had removed his safety belt in order to shoot Rambo from a better angle, loses his balance and falls to his death just as the pilot loses control. Rambo rushes up to Gau's dead body and steals his police jacket. Meanwhile, Will is devastated after discovering Gau's body on a farm. He and his officers are perplexed as to how Gau fell from the helicopter. Rambo, on the other hand, finds a place to sit and stop the bleeding from his shoulder. Will and his team see Rambo from the top of the mountain and warn him to come to a complete stop. Rambo tries to persuade Will and his search team that Gau's death was an accident, not his fault. He tries to reassure them that he has had enough. Will and the officers, however, are enraged by Gau's death and begin firing at him. Fortunately, the shot is not fatal, and Rambo begins to flee. Will notices that the helicopter has vanished yet again, so he radios a patrolman to request that the helicopter return to escort Gau's body. The patrolman also informs Will that he performed a quick scan on Rambo and discovered that he is an ex-Green. This information will surprise the Medal of Honor recipient and war hero, but he is still determined to exact revenge on his friend. Gat. The rest of the officers are hesitant to pursue Rambo because he is so powerful and courageous, but Will believes that Rambo is just one wounded man and that he and his team can easily catch Rambo. The rain falls on the search team as they set out to find Rambo. When it gets dark, the search team misidentifies a hunter as Rambo and shoots at him, wounding him. Rambo, on the other hand, intends to use guerrilla tactics against the police officers while the search team looks for him. One of them is subdued as a result of Rambo's improvised booby traps made with his bare hands. Following each other, Rambo has subdued all of the deputies and rendered them non-lethal. Will is left alone. Will is terrified of seeing his deputies get knocked down. Rambo suddenly appears in front of him, holding his knife to Will's throat. He threatens him with a war he won't believe if Will does not relent. Rambo quickly vanishes into thin air after the news of the manhunt spreads like wildfire in the city, and the state police, along with the Washington National Guard, arrive in the woods to assist Will. Everyone tells Will that the manhunt is pointless, but he refuses. "I can't think of anything else but vengeance right now." Colonel Sam Troutman, Rambo's mentor and former commanding officer, arrives and he interrupts Will, telling him that he's come to take his boy Rambo. Troutman apparently trained Rambo for 3 years, which is why he's so strong. Will is enraged to see the colonel and informs him that he does not require his assistance in capturing Rambo because he is capable of doing so on his own. He's instead come to save Will from Rambo. Troutman tries to convince Will to stop the manhunt and back down, despite the fact that he's a wild dog who can overpower anyone. He tries to convince Will that Rambo's time in Vietnam shaped him into a master of guerrilla warfare and wilderness survival. Troutman repeatedly advises Will to let Rambo escape in order to keep things under control, but Will refuses, believing that Rambo is alone and outnumbered. He is adamant that he is a sheriff who must carry out his duties to keep his town safe. Meanwhile, Rambo, as a forest animal, hunts for himself to satiate his hunger and gain strength. He goes into hiding and builds a campfire to keep warm in the cold. Troutman, on the other hand, will be asked to contact Rambo via the police radio that Rambo had stolen earlier from one of his deputies, and try to persuade him to surrender to the police. Rambo recognizes the Troutman's voice right away and appears surprised to hear it. He initially remains silent, but then responds to the radio, alerting everyone in the police tent. He tells Troutman about his comrades who died in the war. Rather than empathizing, Troutman attempts to persuade him to surrender. He assures him that he does not want him to cause any harm by flying out of town. Rambo, on the other hand, refuses to listen to him because he cannot trust Will. He continues to accuse Will and his deputies of abusing and mistreating him. He emphasizes that Will and his deputies started the conflict by drawing first blood. The next morning, as the search team begins to look for Rambo, he attempts to breach the barrier. Just then, a young boy out hunting in the woods spots Rambo and runs to inform the authorities of his location. Rambo chases after the boy and overpowers him, but he does not harm him. The boy screams to alert the search team to Rambo's location. Will orders the deputies to surround the area and not shoot until he orders them to because he wants Rambo to live. In contrast, a group of deputies opens fire, forcing Rambo to flee to a small abandoned mine. Rambo is warned to come out or else a rocket will be launched at him. Right then, an amateur deputy in command of the group employs A. Despite Will's orders to wait for him before doing anything, he blasts the mine and appears to kill Rambo. Fortunately, Rambo escapes before the blast arrives at the mine, only to discover that his inexperienced deputies blasted the mine without his permission. Dissatisfied with his team, he returns to town and orders his deputies to search for Rambo's body. Troutman tries to persuade Will to leave Rambo and get his head out of the case because it is unsafe for him. but Will ignores him, telling him that if he comes across Rambo, he will snap his head off. Meanwhile, Rambo devises another means of escape. He takes over his supply truck, which is loaded with ammunition and an M60 machine gun, and drives toward them to divert the attention of the search team. Rambo causes mayhem in the city. He starts by blowing up a gas station. He then turns off the majority of the town's lights. Rambo soon discovers Will on the police station's rooftop. They both point guns at each other, and a brief shootout ensues, with Will being shot but not fatal. Rambo then attempts to kill Will once and for all in retaliation for the abuse he has inflicted on him. But before he can, Troutman arrives, warning Rambo to let go. He threatens Rambo with death if he does not surrender. He begins to open up to his mentor, telling him about his friend's death and his own post-traumatic stress disorder. He is heartbroken over the brutal treatment he received from the police. Troutman feels bad for Rambo and comforts him when he returns to his country and hears his heartfelt story. Will is taken to the hospital for treatment at the end of the film after falling from the skylight. Rambo, on the other hand, surrenders to police and is taken into federal custody. We really appreciate you watching. If you enjoy this video, please give it a like. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel with the notification bell because it is really important for us. Thank you.